Justice Smith. Jabari for three and the win. Yeah! He got it!
Turn things around so much.
I think we found 5 guys who wanted to play hard enough, compete at the level that we need them to from the start. Went with the lineup that really got after it, and it was obviously played about a quarter and a half of good basketball with the proper intensity and focus. So we found the right group that got after it.
We got to start off that way. I take ownership on that. I'm one of the energy leaders on this team, so I got to somehow, some way find how to give that energy from the beginning. If it's on defense, if it's on offense, We're here to Fuel Rockets News. This is Rockets Fuel Podcast. I'm your co-host, Lachard Binkley. Of course, you always find me on Twitter at Binkley Hoops, or my written work over at the SB Nation or the Dream Shake. And before we get into last night's unfortunate comeback loss by the Rockets, I want to give my co-host a chance to introduce himself.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Vator. You can find me at Vator Sports on Twitter and Instagram for your Rockets-related news and highlights.
And as you saw in those opening clips, Vader, we saw Coach Udoka talking about the last night's loss, and we also saw Dylan Brooks with his choice of a hat, or however you want us to call it, whatever that was on top of his head. But we saw them talking about last night's almost historic comeback for the Rockets. That would have been the biggest comeback in franchise history, 28 points, but they weren't able to pull it off at the end. But in today's show, we're going to talk a little bit about last night's loss. We're also going to talk about the season as a whole, as we want to kind of talk about what exactly is the Rockets team? Are they the team early in the season who were surprising everyone, was in like 3rd or 4th place in the Western Conference, was making real strides, seemed like they were going to be one of the big surprise teams of the year, or they're more like the Rockets are now, where they win 1 game, lose 2, or win 2, lose 1, kind of going back and forth and hovering around 500. We're going to be talking about that as well in the second segment. But I want to start, of course, with last night's loss, where the Rockets came out kind of flat after a big win in Charlotte the night before. They got in late, apparently, into Brooklyn. They had some trouble with their flight. They also started off the game really slow. They struggled from the beginning. They had turnovers. Brooklyn came out really aggressive, really took it to the Rockets. I think they started off the game off 11-2. May had to call a quick timeout. And the Rockets struggled for pretty much the entire first half into the third quarter. They were still trailing by 20 points going into the fourth quarter, but they were able to make that huge comeback with players like Amenthompson and Cam Whitmore were making big plays. They were able to get it all the way down to 1 point at the end of the game. But again, it was, yes, there was a horrible should have been a jump ball call, but they ended up calling a foul on Jalen Green. The referees anticipated that he was going to foul, which he didn't. It was pretty obvious that it should have been a jump ball call. But it shouldn't have came down to that. Alperen Sengun had a chance to tie it and possibly send it to overtime, but he missed 1 or 2 free throws. But again, probably shouldn't have came down to that. As you saw, Coach wasn't happy with the way it started. He said he had to find 5 players that were willing to go out there and play hard in the intensity that he expected. And that's kind of why we didn't see Alperen Sengun play in the fourth. And I know people were upset about that. And let's get it out of the way real early here. There's no conspiracy against Alperen Sengun by the Rockets franchise. The Rockets have no problem with him being their best player. They have no problem with him being on the court when he's out there playing winning basketball. And yes, there's other people that don't play well sometimes, like Fred VanVleet and even Dylan Brooks. But when it comes to the young players, it's been pretty consistent. If you're not playing well or you're not playing winning basketball, then you're not going to play late in the fourth. And Alperen wasn't playing for most of the fourth quarter for those reasons. But at the end of the day, the game probably shouldn't have came down to that. The Rockets, even with their kind of sporadic play lately, they still are a better team than Brooklyn. So they should have came out with more intensity. Even after a back-to-back, they should have came out with more intensity, and they didn't until later in the game, and that's when they had their big comeback. But what did you see kind of just overall from the Rockets in this last game? Yes, they had the big win in Charlotte, but Charlotte's not exactly a great measuring stick when it comes to how you're actually playing, because Charlotte doesn't really play any defense whatsoever. And Brooklyn kind of took it to the Rockets early and made them fight all the way back and come up short.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Charlotte game a little bit, because that was more enjoyable. The Charlotte game, they don't play NBA caliber defense. So we got a fun game. It was like a G League game, and Jalen Green went crazy. He got like his first career double.
Yeah.
What he had, like 36 points and through 3 quarters and 10 rebounds. We saw the little dust up between Cam Whitmore and LaMelo Ball. That got a lot of like attention on the internet. They exchanged words back and forth. But like that's one of the things I like about Cam, man. Cam is 19 years old and he's just a bull. He didn't back down. LaMelo Ball is a star in the NBA right now. And Cam Whitmore doesn't care. Cam Whitmore,
no, he doesn't.
Like, hey, let's go to the back or whatever. Let's talk about this in the back, off this court. You know what I mean? But that was a fun game to watch. You saw, a lot of guys like really, really show out, and the scoring was easy. And then you flip to the Brooklyn game very next night. And going into the game, I'm thinking, okay, we're going to play well because we did not extend ourselves the previous night. Even though it's a back, most guys did not play heavy minutes. So you assume going into that game is going to be competitive. And then for them to come out and completely lay an egg in the first 3 quarters, like you said, it was very discouraging. And you're like, what's going on? I do realize we're missing some key players, but the intensity level that they came out with, the intention that they came out with as far as being forceful on defense and kind of running the offense correctly and things like that, it just wasn't there. There was no fire. And so I was trying to run like a live stream during the game, and it just made it terrible, just because of the fact, like, you're sitting there, through the first quarter, like nobody is hooping, nobody is like playing defense. Like Brooklyn is out there just kind of hitting there. I think they hit like their first, I'm probably exaggerating, but I want to say they made like 12 of their first 14 shots, something ridiculous.
Oh, no, you're not exaggerating. That's exactly what happened.
I don't know the exact stat, but I do remember it was something like that. I think it was 12 or 14 or whatever. But and you're sitting there and you're watching, and it's like, come on, guys, what's going on? Because like you were saying and then alluding to earlier, which is what we're going to talk about later, the one thing that traveled with this team, the one thing that they could hang their hat on early was their defensive intensity.
Yeah,
we've seen that's been that. There's probably reasons why it's fallen off a lot lately, but it's pretty clear. Like, if this team is not going to lock back in defensively, if they're not going to regain that identity that they established at the beginning of the season, I think it's kind of wishful thinking at this point, as far as them, making the playoff push. The schedule that is coming up, you just have to win games like this. You can't lose games to the Nets. And who was the other game we lost just the other day?
Portland. That's a whole other game.
Yeah, the Portland game.
That was a horrible loss.
You cannot lose these type of games, because these are the wins you need, because you have stretches of the schedule where you're going to be playing the Phoenix Suns of the world. You have a couple games with the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have for a lot of the season had the best record in the Western Conference. So like, these are the games that you have to come out and at least be competitive and give yourself an opportunity to win, and not leave it to chance at the end of the game. Yeah, there were some bad calls at the end. Cam Thomas stepped out of bounds. The jump ball between Jalen Green and Cam Thomas was called a foul on Jalen Green. And then, they were chucking shots at the end. It wasn't just Jason Tate. His just sticks out in my mind the most, because he took a step back, and so he got the ball, and I was like, please don't shoot this 3-pointer, because like, I feel like we could just work the ball around and get a better shot. Like, if you get it and it's like a second left and you have to shoot a desperation 3, then fine. But he said he started driving to the basket, and I'm like, okay, maybe something good can happen from this. And then he took a step back 3, and I literally yelled at my screen. And I know like the guys who I was watching the game with did as well. And he wasn't the only one who had some egregious shots towards the end of the game. There was some diabolical stuff going on.
Fred VanVleet had some questionable shots too.
Yeah, and I think Brooks took a couple that were just kind of like, man. And I know, these guys are trying to win a basketball game, but it was just like, there was no like, yeah, Fred did take one. It was a guy like a foot away from him and then in his face. But I don't know, man. Part of that not having Sengun in the game affects you offensively. I can't really argue with it too much because of the fact that like they did make their run, to put the game in striking distance with him on the bench. But like in those situations right there, when you don't have your best offensive player on the floor and your offensive hub in the game, you do probably see, some less structured offense. But the shot selection was just bad. We could have gotten better shots. I think guys were like, okay, I'm gonna be the hero, and not in a negative way, but I just wish we would have approached those last couple minutes a little bit differently.
Yeah, and let's not get it twisted. There's some, even besides Sengun, there's some like Fred VanVleet, for instance. His play has fallen off lately, and we were talking a little bit about this before the show. I think a lot of it has to do with he at the beginning of the year, for most of the first part of the year, he was at the top or near the top in minutes played, and that's just not sustainable for somebody that's 30 years old, that's maybe 5'10", 5'11". I doubt he's 6 feet because I'm over 6 feet, a little over 6 feet, and I'm pretty much at the same height or a little bit taller than he is. So just imagine trying to go up against 6'5", 6'6", super athletic guys on the perimeter, and then you get into the rim and you got 7 feet athletic guys and you're trying to shoot over them. That's hard for anybody to do, especially somebody now is 30 years old, is playing 39, 40 minutes a game. He played another 39 minutes last night. I think it's getting to the point now, you could tell even like last night's game where his shot is off because he's probably is getting worn down, and it's getting to the point now where, oh man, it's getting a lot more comfortable. He probably needs to start getting some more of those minutes, and that'll help Fred in the long run because if you look at the standings, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in the second segment, but if you look at the standings, it's really going to come down to 3 teams for that final playing spot. I don't think the Rockets are going to catch the Lakers. I don't think they're going to catch the Mavericks. I think both of those teams are going to probably, get even further ahead in the standings. It's going to come down to the Warriors, the Rockets, and surprisingly enough, the Jazz. Those 3 teams for that final playing spot. And if you're looking on the outside looking in, you're probably like, okay, the Warriors are going to take that spot, even though they've been struggling too. But again, they've been there, done that. The Rockets haven't been there, done that. Exactly. So you need all these wins, like you were saying, especially against teams like Brooklyn, who have been struggling big time lately to win any type of game. So you cannot lose games that you're supposed to win, because now you go up against the Lakers team, who maybe that'll help you tomorrow, the fact that they have to play a double overtime tough game against the Warriors, but you're still going up against, possibly, if they don't sit them out, LeBron and AD and the Lakers, who right now you're 1 game behind in the loss column. But you have to take those games. I think a lot of times the Rockets, I don't know if it's consciously or not, but a lot of times they think that they're going against teams that have a worse record than them. They can kind of just roll the ball out and win these games, but they're not good enough yet to go out there and just kind of like, okay, we can turn it on whenever we want to. They're not the Boston Celtics. They're not Milwaukee Bucks. They're not, those type of teams that feel like they can just go out and just turn it on at any time and win games. They have to play hard from the start. And lately, the Rockets haven't been playing with that same type of intensity as they did earlier. Like you said, they're missing players that play with that type of intensity, like Tari Eason, but it's really no excuse for other players to come out and kind of play lackadaisical like they did yesterday to start the game.
Yeah, so like that's one of the things. Like I know some of my friends, they're like, yeah, this team is bad. They're I think that because we're losing, you're losing some of these games that they should win. And I've been kind of like, if you look like player for player, Alperen Sengun is an all-star. But like if you just go down these rosters, when you take Tari Eason out of the lineup, you take Jabari Smith Jr. out of the lineup. We were without Dylan Brooks for several games too. You take some of those guys off the lineup and you just go player for player, like you said. We're not a lot better, like roster wise, than these teams. So like they cannot take these teams lightly when they go into the game, because like when we're not deep enough for that. And some of it isn't just who we're missing from the lineup. It's the guys, respectfully, who are taking up their minutes in replacement. So we've seen Reggie Bullock minutes, not a lot, but he's gotten his opportunity to try to come in and fill some of those minutes. We see more Jock Landale minutes at times. We've seen more Jason Tate minutes at times, and he hasn't really been that good this year so far. We've seen who's it? Jeff Green. Like Jeff Green.
Yeah, he's starting to fall off some.
He's starting to, and you know what? He's been playing heavy minutes too. You know, maybe Jeff Green in 15 minutes is a serviceable and a player who can contribute to winning. Maybe 30 minutes and 35 minutes, Jeff Green is not so good, right? So, yeah, we need to get healthy. Hopefully, Stone is able to like swing something during the trade before the trade deadline. Not, you know, it doesn't even have to be a starter caliber player. I know a lot of people are like hoping that he brings in somebody who can start for Jalen Green or whatever. You know, I'd be perfectly happy with them bringing in a backup dude or bringing in, I don't know, bringing in some more scoring punch that you could put at the shooting guard position. Bringing in another guy who can take away some of Fred VanVleet's minutes. I mean, hopefully, best case scenario, I feel like that should be amenthompson. And I told you this before, like I kind of feel like he's not playing enough. I feel like when he does go in the game, he's impactful. He's definitely impactful defensively. We saw, you know, the game against Charlotte. He didn't have a triple double, but if he would have played more minutes, he definitely could have gotten a triple double on that team. And how many guys on the team other than Alperen Sengun can you say is a triple double threat? Like it's Sengun and it's amenthompson, and I don't think he's playing enough.
Yeah, I mean that's it because there's other players that may do specific things better than Amen, but Amen is the type of player that can do multiple things well. I mean, he's a really good rebounder. He's already really good on the defensive end. He's probably one of the best players the Rockets have as far as playing in the dunker spot because he knows how to move around the basket. He knows how to be in the right spot, especially when Sengun has the ball, and that's something you definitely need. You need players that know how to cut to the basket at the right time. Sort of like they're missing with Tari Eason because Tari Eason does that very well. He's a very good person as far as cutting to the basket. So Amen, of course, and he gives you the great passing. And he gives you a person that can actually run out on the fast break because the Rockets are probably, last time I checked, was the slowest paced team in the league. And a lot of that has to do with Fred VanVleet. That's not his game. He's not a really up and down type of player. He's more of a running a set offensive type of point guard. But Amen and Cam, they get out on the fast break, and that's something the Rockets sorely need because if it's not Alperen Sengun down in the post, who is kind of your go-to guy on the offensive end? Jalen's been playing better. Don't get me wrong.
He said he was going to be more aggressive. I'd like to see if he actually keeps that up. And one thing I wouldn't mind you, like if you could maybe ask him, I know he's mentioned several times in some of the interviews that I've seen you record that when he's in a game with Fred, he prefers Fred to handle the ball and he wants him to kind of play off ball and learn how to be an off ball player. And I, you know, even like the Toronto Raptors fans, they always talk about how like good Fred is off ball. And so I always wonder in the back of my mind, like, has he? I mean, I don't know how you would phrase this, but it just seems to me like it would be a natural fit for amenthompson to take over playmaking duties and then let Fred VanVleet, who's actually, you know, I'm sure he's a knockdown spot up 3-point shooter, floor spacer, all of that stuff. And it just seems like that would work. And so like I don't know why we don't see more of that. And it's kind of inverted. And you have Fred VanVleet, who, like we said, he's very good in the pick and roll with Alperen Sengun. He's more limited though, like as far as what kind of passes he can make. People complain that he doesn't make skip passes to the corner, and I'm like, well, he can't see those guys over there. And even if he could see
the alley-oop,
how's he going to get them there? You know, how's he going to get the ball over some of these guys' heads or whatever? And you have a guy in amenthompson who has shown, you know, in his limited playing time that he can get downhill and he can make those reads. And so, like, I just envision handling the ball and getting that ball to Fred VanVleet right in his shooting pocket, him knocking down a 3-pointer. But hey, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just a guy on the podcast.
Well, and this is something we talked about actually before the season, because if you go back and look at a lot of the Raptors' previous games where Fred was playing, they ran a lot of inverted pick and rolls where Siakam was the guy that actually was handling the ball, and Fred was set to pick, and he would kind of, instead of, you know, of course, roll it to the basket, he would kind of float out to the 3-point line, and that's where he would get a lot of his spot-up threes, and I think that would help his percentages as well, because a lot of times now he's trying to get these threes off the dribble, and that's not necessarily his game. He's not Steph Curry trying to take people off a dribble and get a a three that way. That's not really his game. And I think having Amen on the court more with Fred and having Fred kind of coming off the screens or being more of a spot up shooter, like you said, I think that will help him in the long run. And I think they did a little bit of that yesterday. We saw Fred and Amen on the court together. But I think as more and more they get used to Amen being on the court and more minutes he gets, I think you'll see that more and more, especially if Jalen is not as consistent as, as he needs to be, as he hasn't been so far. Like I said, he's been playing a little bit better lately, but it's it's kind of a matter of time of whether he's going to continue to do that. But we might see Amen and Fred on the court more, and I think that would help Fred just overall, because right now he's trying to run the offense, and then he's trying to also get up threes over defenders with a hand in his face. I think it'll help his overall game if he's playing more off ball, like you said.
Before we move on to something else, though, like, what is your take on Cam Whitmore? Like, what have you seen from him, like, the past, like, few games or whatever?
So I think Cam Whitmore is exactly what the Rockets need, because the Rockets don't have a lot of guys that can get their own shot. Now, of course, there's some things that Cam need to do better. His shot selection is kind of questionable sometimes, because when he gets the ball, he's usually shooting the ball.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's a great thing. Sometimes that's something you need. Like last night, you needed people that were willing to go out there and be aggressive and get their own shot. But sometimes that can kind of affect the offense if it's a quick shot and you don't get a chance to get the ball down to Sengun, or you don't get a chance to run the offense. But overall, I think he needs to continue to get minutes even when Tyrese and Jabari gets back, because you need players like him that's aggressive, that can get out on a fast break. The Rockets don't have a lot of players like that. And that's willing to go up against anybody, that's not going to be back down and not going to be hesitant as far as taking a shot. Because we saw what happened when he went up against, like you said, went up against Charlotte, and LaMelo Ball got in his face. He didn't back down. What did he do? He went out and hit 4 threes in the fourth quarter, and he continued to talk continued to talk mess the entire fourth quarter. You need that type of energy, intensity, because that's the one thing we know that MA loves, is somebody that plays with intensity. He's willing to deal with he's willing to deal with mistakes, as long as you're going out there playing hard every game, because not everybody in the NBA does that. Some players, some games they play hard, and in some games they don't. With people like Tyrese and Cam, every single game, they may not make the right plays all the time, but they're going to go out there and play hard every single game. And I'm willing to look past the mistakes, because you're going to get 100% effort from Cam every single game.
Yeah, I think his he has his warts. He's 19 years old, and I think they've obviously been getting with him in the film room and showing him he's making effort sometimes. There are some times where he gets the ball, and I know he wants to shoot it. He gets into the shooting motion and he passes it. He had a pretty egregious one last night. I think Jalen Green was wide open right next to him, and he started to go to the basket.
Yeah.
He thought about passing it to him, and then he ended up making a pass. I forgot who was under the basket, but they got a layup. So it wasn't pretty, but I think he's starting to think the game more. But the one, like you said, the one thing he can do is score that basketball. He can dunk, he can shoot. He's a walking highlight reel. He's aggressive. He has irrational confidence, and by that I mean he can miss 8 shots in a row, and then he thinks he's gonna make the next 10.
Yeah.
And I like that. Hopefully, over the course of the next year or two, they can start smoothing out some of those rough edges. But I think the Rockets might have gotten the gem at 20.
Yeah, and that's with the Rockets' lack of offense and lack of players that can get their own shot. You need somebody like Cam Whitmore, and I think the more playing time he gets, the more he'll get used to being able to make those passes instead of taking a shot. And I think that's a real easy fix. So that's not something I would rather have somebody that takes too many shots but can make those shots than somebody that is real hesitant and they can't get off their own shot without having some type of play being ran for them. So I think whatever issues he does have, they're really minor things that can be fixed pretty easy.
And he can rebound.
By his coaching staff. And he can rebound, and he's willing to play defense. And I think he'll get even. He may not ever be a lockdown defender. Maybe he will, but he'll always at least be good enough on the defensive end to where you won't have to worry about, okay, they're targeting Cam Whitmore.
Right, yeah.
Like certain players get targeted on certain teams. So I don't think you ever will have to worry about that with Cam.
Yeah, because his one-on-one defense isn't that bad. It's the help defense, and most of these guys don't come into the NBA with, ready to play solid NBA help defense. That's like the hardest thing for them. But his own ball defense, I would say, is passable. It's good enough right now. Hopefully, he can get better. He has guys on the team with Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks and Tyrese and guys like that who. Even Jabari, I think Jabari's taken a huge step forward defensively this season from last season, and so he has a wealth of knowledge around him. As long as he's coachable, I think sky's the limit for that dude.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to do it for the first segment. Second segment, we're going to take a more of a broader look at the Houston Rockets and kind of get a feel on if this is kind of what the team they're going to be, unless they make some moves, or if they are they going to be more like the team they were early in the season, where they were surprising a lot of people. They were like really in the middle of the playoff picture. And will they go back to that team? Does it have more to do with the injuries, like we were talking a little bit about in the first segment? We're going to talk a little bit about that and kind of give a preview of the Rockets and Lakers game coming up on tomorrow, which is another big game, especially when it comes to the playoffs, because we're already past the halfway mark as far as the schedule is concerned, even though we haven't got to the All-Star break yet, but we're past the 41 game mark. So every single game is a huge game at this point. There's no more early in the season you can kind of make up for it type of thing. Every game is a huge game. So we'll preview a little bit of the Lakers game as well, come up in the second segment. So please stick around and we'll be right back. And welcome back to the Rocket Fuel podcast, presented by Believe. Again, I didn't actually mention that at the beginning, but if you didn't know that Rockets Fuel is now part of the Believe network. So we're definitely happy to be part of that network and looking forward to bigger and better things coming in the future. So make sure you're checking out all the podcasts on the Believe network, because there's a lot of great podcasts on there, a lot of former players doing podcasts. So it's definitely a network that's growing fast. So make sure you check them out. And on this second segment, we're going to be touching a little bit more of some of the topics we talked about in the first part, where we were talking about a bigger picture of the Rockets and who exactly are the Rockets? Are they the Rockets at the beginning of the year who were surprising everybody? Are they the Rockets now who are winning the game, losing the game, kind of going back and forth and hover around 500? So what's kind of your opinion on that? Are we looking at what the Rockets are going to be the rest of the season right now, as far as, yes, they can beat the better teams in the league, but they can also easily lose to the bad teams in the NBA as well? And can they go back to kind of at the beginning of the year where they were surprising a lot of people? And once they get back players like Tari and Jabari, we'll start seeing more of the defensive intensity that we saw at the beginning of the year. Because if you look at the numbers, the Rockets were actually the number one defensive team in the league a big chunk of the first part of the year, but now they dropped down to number 10 in points allowed. It's been even worse the last 2 or 3 weeks. So what team are the Rockets? Are they the beginning of the year Rockets and they're just kind of struggling right now, or this is what the Rockets are? They're just a hovering around 500 team.
I think you touched on it a lot. What I was thinking, like early in the season, you saw like a defensive intensity that we haven't seen a whole lot of, even prior to the injuries. I think you started to see like some regression with the defense. So it's kind of hard to say, but I will say, I feel like in order for them to get back to their winning ways, to where they're a team that's an above 500 team, it has to be defensively. This team is not equipped. I don't know if it's a personnel thing or if it's just from a X's and O's perspective, but they're not good offensively. They just aren't. Yeah. It's not a good offensive team. And I even said earlier in the season when we were winning more consistently, that for me it was kind of hard to watch because it was really clunky. It was kind of a mess. But I was fine with it because we were playing good enough defense to win basketball games. So I'm not going to complain about the offense when they're scoring enough points to win games and the defense is locking people up. But now that the defense has slid a little, you start to see more of the warts that the offense has. I think it's limited. We run a lot of Fred VanVleet, Sengun pick and roll, and I think a lot of teams have started to figure that out, and they're trying to take Sengun away. And so what is the counter to that? And we haven't seen enough effective counters to where the team looks good offensively, or even looks decent at times. We have some like pretty good like individual performances from guys who are just going out there and creating their own shots. But I don't think we can confuse Ime Udoka for an offensive guru. Like we've had Rick Adelman and Mike D'Antoni, but we've also had Jeff Van Gundy, who was a good coach in his own right, but he's a defensive minded coach, and I think that's more of what we have here with Udoka, which is fine. But I don't know. I don't know what the answer is offensively. I don't know if they maybe need to bring another guy in to kind of like help that out. You know how like D'Antoni had to bring in a guy to help him with the defense. Be basically his defensive coordinator. Udoka might need an offensive coordinator, but like as far as right now in the interim, as we go towards the end of the season, I think the best way for them to get back to winning is to like reestablish what made them who they were in the beginning of the season, and that was the defense. That was the intensity on defense. That was them trying to lock guys up. The point of attack defense was good. The help defense was good. The rotations were solid. Guys were flying around to the ball, and you haven't seen as much of that lately. We've been giving up a lot of points. We've let some guys get hot on us and like have really good shooting nights against us, and so that's what I want to see. And yes, you're missing Tari Eason, who by most of like any impact statistics you want to look at is probably one of our top 2 or 3 players. You're missing Jabari Smith Jr., who has been a very good player for us this season as far as playing defense and being a floor spacer. So I don't want to minimize the fact that you've taken those 2 guys out. Dylan Brooks was out for an extended period of time. So yeah, when you take guys out of the lineup that are like actually good defenders, your defense is going to be worse. But as you alluded to earlier, you can't have games like yesterday where you just come out with no intensity. That's completely different. There's a difference between ability to do it and want to, right? So like I might have Fred VanVleet, who he just doesn't have the ability to do certain things, right? But you can tell when a person is coming out and playing and they're not playing as hard, or they're not bringing that same level of intensity. There's a difference. Like some guys are limited, but you should never your effort and your intensity should never waver the way this team does, especially if they actually are trying to make the playoffs, and I know they are.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing for me, because a lot of times you hear coach saying, "Yeah, we didn't come out with the intensity." Dylan even said it yesterday, as you heard earlier in the show, that they didn't have the intensity, and part of that was his fault. And again, I understand it's a long season. They're human beings just like anybody else. They get tired, and it's not easy to go from playing one night, getting in late, and then playing against a team that you probably think you're better than anyway, and come and play with that intensity. But you can't let those type of games start to snowball and run together, because one game turns into 3 games, and then 3 games turn into 6 games, and guess what? You're now in the 11th spot instead of possibly in the play-in spot, with a possibility of moving on to the actual playoffs, and all these games start to add up at the end of the year. So yes, you're not going to always make shots. Yes, your defense is not always going to be top of the league, but one thing that should always be there is your intensity and how hard you play. And some of the game recently, we just haven't seen that from the Rockets. Another thing I want to kind of get to is the All-Star reserves will be announced on February 1st, Thursday. And we all saw that Sengun did not get named as All-Star starter. We all kind of thought that was a long shot. But what do you think his chances to be named a reserve? Because you still got players in the front court like Kawhi Leonard, like a Paul George, even a Lauri Markkanen from Utah. You still have several other players that could possibly still get named. But again, Alperen Sengun, you put his number up against anybody, he has some of the best numbers of any front court player in the league. And I don't know exactly when they have to make the decision, but I think the game tomorrow is going to be a lot of eyes on that game with the Rockets and the Lakers. So that's definitely a big opportunity again for Alperen Sengun to show that he's one of the best front court players in the league. But what do you think his chances of being one of the reserves announced on Thursday?
I don't know. I have this like Houston against the world type of mentality. I don't know. I just feel like for some reason, I feel like they're going to cheat him out of a well-deserved All-Star appearance. Like I think he, like you said, you put his numbers up against any of those guys, and he clearly deserves a spot. But every year there's a guy or two who deserves to get in and they don't make it. And I think there's a chance that when the names are announced that his name might not be on there. And make no mistake about it, I think he deserves to be there. Over most of the guys that you would mention, Chet Holmgren, he's a guy who he's going to be competing with as far as making it. Obviously, Wemby's kind of coming on lately too, and I don't know. I just kind of find it hard to believe that the NBA is going to have an All-Star game and don't put their put their unicorn, put their cat, whatever you want to call him. He's next up. I saw him do some of you may not be familiar with the name of this dribble move, but it's called a sham dive. And I've only seen like small people do it, and this dude is 7'5", and he did it in a game yesterday. Like, they want that dude in the All-Star game, so there's going to be some politics, some things behind the scenes. I don't know. I want Alpy to make it, and I think he deserves to make it, but I think it's going to be an uphill battle and a fight. And if he does get in, we got to throw a party in Houston.
So let me go through some of the names real quick. So we all know LeBron, Jokic, and Durant were the front court players that made it. Then you have players like Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, like I said, Paul George, like you mentioned, Victor Wembanyama, even though, again, I think if you're just looking at overall impact on winning, which I know they claim they don't look at when it comes to All-Star voting, but I think that should have something to do with it. Alperen Sengun has had a bigger impact as far as winning. And then, like I said, Lauri Markkanen, and like you said, Chet Holmgren. And I think I agree with you. I think that they're going to try to either shoehorn in Victor Wembanyama somehow, or give a legacy invite to players like Kawhi Leonard or Paul George or somebody like that. And I think what ends up happening is Sengun should make it as a reserve, but I think like a Kawhi Leonard's going to probably get voted in and then probably not play. Something like that's going to happen. And then hopefully he'll get in that way. But I think, like you said, when it comes to the NBA, as far as looking at just Houston overall, I don't think they first look to Houston when they're trying to. And I know the coaches have a lot they're the ones actually making this vote. But if we don't think the NBA has some type of influence in it, I think that's kind of being a little bit naive when we're looking at the final tally, because at the end of the day, it is about entertainment and it is about what they kind of want in the NBA All-Star game. So I think he should make it. Do I think he will make it? I don't think he will make it initially, but I think he has a chance of making it as like an injury reserve type of player.
And I do think down the line he's going to make several All-Star teams. I don't know about this year. This is kind of his first breakout season, and so they do take some of that into consideration. If you didn't come in with the fanfare of a Victor Wembanyama, it's kind of an uphill battle. We saw with Yao Ming when Yao Ming first came into the NBA. He didn't have to really work for his All-Star appearances at first. He kind of got them because he's just a huge megastar. Alpy earned his All-Star talk this season, and I think moving forward, I think he's going to make some, especially when the Rockets surround him with better shooting. Think about all the stuff he's doing right now with mediocre shooting around him. When you have a guy like Jokic out, and then you have Sabonis. Those guys have snipers around them. You know what I mean? And so Sengun is actually he's doing a lot with less room. So just imagine when teams can't collapse all those players on him, and if they do, he just kicks it out, and you got a guy who is gonna knock down pretty much every shot every pass you throw out to him, who the defense is afraid to leave, like Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray, Keegan Murray's, those kind of guys. So,
let's be honest, Sengun should probably be averaging 7-8 assists a game right now, and he's not, because, like you said, especially the last few weeks, the Rockets have been the worst shooting team in the league the last 3 or 4 weeks. So it's a lot of assists that are being left on the table.
Right. So just imagine how good we keep forgetting he's 21 because it's year 3, and it kind of feels like he's been here and he's mature. So he kind of seems older than that. This is 21-year-old we're talking about, who is just really scratching the surface, and the guys around him are also young. and and there, like I said, there is a lack of shooting. And so like when some of those things start to like catch up to where he is to the level that he's playing, like I think you're going to see him take yet another leap, and that's kind of scary. And yeah, so the All-Star game, like it's not the end of the world if he doesn't make it. I think we'll all be disappointed, but me personally, I won't be surprised. And I do hope he gets in still from like maybe a guy making it who's been to like 10 or 12 of them, and it's like, yeah, you know what? I'd rather just be off this weekend, and then he can get in that way.
Yeah, because he absolutely deserves it, with his play the entire season. And he's the number one reason why the Rockets are actually 1 win away from tying their record from last season even before the All-Star break, which is just crazy. One more thing before we wrap up the show real quickly. I want to get your thoughts on tomorrow's game against the Lakers. We're right now assuming that everybody's going to be playing for the Lakers tomorrow. So real quick, do you think if you had to just kind of give a percentage, what do you think the percentage chance that the Rockets actually win tomorrow's game, which they are playing at home and they do play better, Portland game notwithstanding, they do usually play better at home. And this is the first matchup since the whole dust up back in LA with MA and LeBron and Dylan and LeBron. So
soft boy.
Yeah. So all that's going to be, kind of swirling around tomorrow as well. So what's kind of your thoughts on tomorrow's game?
I'm thinking 50-50 because the Lakers have LeBron, they have Anthony Davis, but I think they're going to get up for a Lakers team. That's a team that they always seem to like have a little extra juice for. I don't think they're going to come out and have any kind of like intensity issues like they had going against the Brooklyn Nets, because you are going up against hopefully LeBron James, and you're going up against a team that's won a championship the past few years. It's the Lakers. It's the Lakers, baby. You got to get up for the Lakers. D'Lo's been hooping. He hit a big shot yesterday. Well, he hit a few big shots yesterday in that game. Then you have the whole. You remember when Udoka played that whole Team USA thing against Jalen Green?
Him and Austin Reeves,
yeah. You still have that little underlining story. And see, that was one of like Jalen Green's best games of the season. You know what I mean? And so there's just so many like reasons to be excited about this game if everybody does play. And even though they'll be shorthanded, I think guys will be up for it. The only reason I would give it more than a 50% chance if we were actually at full strength, since it is at home. But if Jabari doesn't play again and Tari's out, I think that does minimize our chances of beating a team like that.
Yeah. So Jabari should be back tomorrow. That's what they say. So hopefully he'll be back tomorrow. I'm pretty sure Tari won't be playing tomorrow, but hopefully Jabari will be back tomorrow. So I agree with you. It's a 50-50 chance. And that's the one good thing. There's a 0 chance that they come out with low intensity against a Lakers team that, everybody gets up to play the Lakers, especially the Rockets, especially MA is going to make it a point to get across to them what happened last game. So they'll come out with some type of fire intensity tomorrow. So it should be a really good game. I will be out at tomorrow's game, so we'll have all the pre and post game coverage up on our YouTube page. As usual, we appreciate all the support. We definitely appreciate being on the Believe Network now. It's been great so far, and we definitely appreciate everybody that gives us likes and subscribes. Please let us know down in the comments again. Do you think Alperen Sengun is going to make the All-Star reserve that's going to be announced on Thursday? And what do you think of the Rockets so far? Do you think that the Rockets can turn it around and become more of the team they were at the beginning of the year? Or do you expect them to kind of just hover around 500 like they've been the last few weeks? What do you think the Rockets should do also in the trade market? Do you think they need a big man more, or do they need more scoring like Vator has been talking about earlier, with the Rockets not having a lot of help on the offensive end? So definitely let us know down in the comments. Like I said, we appreciate all the support. Vader, of course, I appreciate you as usual jumping on and helping me co-host the show.
Appreciate you too, brother. We'll see you again in a few days, man.
Absolutely. And like I said, definitely appreciate support. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and also leave comments, because that always helps us with the YouTube algorithm so more people can see these videos. And as usual, make sure you check out the next episode of Rockets Fuel Podcast.